Hi ladies, welcome back. I have a topic I want to discuss, but before I get started, I just want to say this is not a debate. This is not about politics. This is just to bring awareness, have a conversation, and give information. Today I want to talk to you about Savannah's law. This law exists because a woman lost her life. While that alone should make us pause, the law itself isn't what's weighing heavy on me. It's what it says about relationships, about patterns, about what starts long before the tragedy ever makes the headlines. And as a mom, that's what I can't stop thinking about. Because laws are reactions. Conversations at home is our prevention. And I think we need both. If we have these conversations, we could prevent needing to use the reaction. There has been a huge conversation happening lately, especially in rooms full of women, working women, moms, professionals, and leaders, and that is the Tennessee Domestic Violence Registry Law, which we know is Savannah's law. It went into effect January the 1st of this year, and Tennessee became the first state to create a public registry for repeat domestic violence offenders. It was created after a young woman named Savannah Puckett lost her life to the hands of her boyfriend. And anytime that something like that happens, we all ask the same question, which is, how do we prevent this from happening again? And the state answered that question with this law. But I think there's a bigger, deeper underlying question. How do we prevent these patterns long before they get to that point, before they escalate to this point? If you're not familiar with Savannah's law, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit about it. So here's what the law does. It creates a public registry that is kind of like the sex offender registry, but it's specifically for certain repeat domestic violence offenders. It only applies to the people from 2026 on. So if you've offended in 2026 and moving forward, that's where it applies. It doesn't go back. It's not going back to previous convictions. It includes a name, a photo, and the conviction information. Supporters really want this because they say it's going to increase the transparency and allow people to make decisions, informed decisions on who they're dating. But people are against it because they're like, well, how long is that going to last on someone? Like, what are these long-lasting consequences? And, what about the fairness? Who's to say that the lady's not lying or the guy's not lying? So, I'm not here to debate policy. I'm just here to talk about the conversations it opens. Because while the law is about repeat offenders, relationships don't start with repeat offenders, do they? They usually start with small patterns. As a mom, this law hit me differently because Savannah was very young. And most unhealthy relationships don't really begin in adulthood. They begin in high school, they begin in college, in your early years where jealousy feels flattering and control feels like protection and isolation just feels like we just love each other. We want to be around only each other. Teen relationship abuse doesn't start with bruises. It starts emotionally. There's control and jealousy, possessiveness, and isolation. And what our kids are going to normalize now is what they're going to tolerate later. And that's the part that keeps me thinking. We are raising our daughters in a world where we teach them to be strong. We teach them to be independent, confident, and not to settle. And although all of that matters, strength alone isn't always going to protect them from emotional manipulation. Sometimes it's not about weakness. Sometimes it's about inexperience. Do our daughters know what healthy love looks like? Do they know that constant texting to check where you are isn't always love? That jealousy isn't protection? And that isolation from friends isn't always romance? Are we having these conversations early enough? Because by the time the registry exists, the relationship has already escalated far beyond red flags. Although we tend to think about girls when we talk about Savannah's law, we also have to talk about boys because this conversation includes them too. Are we teaching our sons how to regulate their emotions, how to have respect in relationships, how to handle rejection, how to communicate, and that love and possession are not the same? But at the same time, are we creating safe spaces for our boys to talk about their feelings so they don't grow into men who express pain through anger? And equally as important, are we making sure that boys know that they can be victims too? Because boys and men experience relationship abuse as well. And many of them are never going to speak on it. Prevention isn't about just protecting girls or just raising emotionally healthy boys. It's about making sure that they both know how to be in a relationship in a healthy way. So let's talk about how our laws are a reaction and our homes are our prevention. This is the part that keeps sitting with me. Laws are created after tragedy, after patterns have escalated, after someone has been hurt, or after a life is lost. Laws are a reaction, but what happens inside homes, that's our prevention. The conversations we have at dinner, in the car, before the date starts, when our kids are teenagers, when they experience their first heartbreak, those conversations shape how they love, how they tolerate, how they respond, and how they know when to leave when something isn't healthy. We cannot rely on our system to protect our children. We have to protect them too. We've got to work on that before we need the system to do it for us. This law isn't just about offenders. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing that relationship violence has long been minimized and hidden behind closed doors. And now there's a shift. There's a shift happening. A shift towards accountability, towards visibility, and towards taking domestic violence seriously. But awareness shouldn't begin when someone's already on a registry. Awareness should begin when our kids start dating, when we notice controlling behavior, when we see emotional manipulation that's being normalized in teenage relationships. That's where change really happens. For the women that are listening, whether you're married, dating, single, raising kids, or you're healing from a past relationship, this conversation matters for you too. Because sometimes we didn't learn healthy relationship patterns growing up. Sometimes we learned through experience, through a heartbreak, through many mistakes, or through staying longer than we should have. And now we're raising the next generation. We get to teach what we wish we would have known sooner, not from fear, but from wisdom. And I want to make sure I say this again, very gently and clearly. This episode isn't about debating whether the law is right or wrong. It's not about politics. It's not about choosing sides. It's about awareness and conversations that should spark inside our homes. You can feel however you want to feel about the law. That's not what this space is for. This space is for awareness and growth. So yes, whether you're on board or not, however you feel, Tennessee does have a domestic violence offender registry. It exists because a life was lost, and it aims to create awareness and accountability. But beyond the law, regardless of how we feel, I hope it starts conversations. Conversations with our daughters, conversations with our sons, conversations with ourselves, conversations with each other, because the healthiest relationships aren't going to begin with laws. They don't start with laws. They begin with awareness and education and having emotional health. Laws, I'll say it again, are a reaction. But what we teach at home, that's prevention. And prevention will always matter more. Moms, please go have these conversations with your kids. Women, have these talks with one another. You never know who's in a situation and they just don't want to talk about it. And that goes for men too. Men are not going to want to have a conversation about being abused by a woman. We're going to have a deeper topic that covers that later on. I want to go back and discuss why men don't want to have that conversation and what we can do to make it to where our sons feel comfortable doing so. So, until next time.
If you're looking for conversation like this, please be sure to follow us.